Alrighty, welcome. I'm just getting ready. Okay. Alright, so I don't need the sound of the cameras, of the helicopters I should say. Right, so what we're doing here is we're just running through what I had running on the screen whilst I was setting the camera up to record. Because we're recording in a very, very high quality mode as a proof of concept for HDR recording, I'm going to just try and be quick. I'm not going to leave things up and running. The numbers in the bottom corner of the screen are in part why I'm filming this, but mainly it's to just have a quick discussion, and I'm just going to run through a quick couple of games and show their settings and just talk about why we might be setting them. Now, primarily this video is about, I guess we could say, Fluidmotion frames and whether it's a bit of a game changer. And so I'll just start with loading up, just because this game takes so long to start because of the generating shaders. And at 422 long-op, which is the filming mode I'm using, which is quite large files, probably don't need a lot of dead air time, so to speak. Don't need a screen up that just takes a long time to build. So I'm going to use this as my intro and a discussion why we're going to play certain games in certain modes. So, having played around the last couple of days and been really recommending Fluidmotion Frames 2, I thought that the Fluidmotion Frames 2 was going to be this flawless technology so long as you could get above, in your 1% lows, as long as you could maintain higher than 30 frames a second. It seemed fairly flawless. And then I played a game where the game didn't support FSR at all. And part of the FSR technologies is intelligently being able to hand over to a motion doubler or a frame doubler movement vectors, so that the frame doubling technology, or in this case Fluidmotion Frames 2, not Fluidmotion Frames 1, which sounded great in theory, and then you used it and it was like, yeah, but it's technically better than turning my TV's motion doubling on, but like just kind of felt like it was adding delay and wasn't necessarily improving things as much as Fluidmotion 2, which I noticed if you turned off all your anti-aliasing, allowed a fidelity on the screen that was top tier. And so as long as you can brute force your games with all the ray tracing, all the settings ultra, to a minimal frame rate that's satisfactory for playing the game, the doubled motion frames might allow you to hit VSync or might allow you to make a wireless controller feel quite responsive. And so for me, if I was to say, is Fluidmotion Frames 2 a game changer? Well, quite legitimately, quite literally, yes. For at least two of my games, the hardest to render games with the ray tracing on, be it Hogwarts Legacy and The Witcher, I have found this technology is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I can now play, I used to have to play Hogwarts Legacy on a mouse with no latency in order for it to feel zippy quick, and I really enjoyed that. But I found if I used a wireless controller, brute forcing a low frame rate just wasn't very nice. Okay, so look, this is Hogwarts Legacy. It's an open world game, generally the hardest genre to render. You can see there's a character doubling, a ghosting if you will, around me. And you'll see that whenever my 99th percentile or 1% lows doesn't make it to 60, right? If it does, that drops right off. Now at the moment, because it's just building the world when it's first come in, I think there's a range of reasons why it might be fairly well taxed. But that being said, I'm not running any FSR, I'm not running any don't render the game at full resolution right now. I am rendering the game at full resolution. So look, just a quick pop into the settings. Right, so this here will just show what we're running, not really what we're doing here. You can see that I've dropped the res, not quite at 4K, but with the low anti-aliasing, we're able to actually run the settings all basically cranked. Right? So it's kind of what we want. But irrelevant to that, this is in, okay, so this is in HDR. Now, why is HDR important? Okay, so two things happened yesterday as I realised if I was using FSR scaling, the detail loss on the screen actually took away most of the benefit of going the difficulty of running all the ray tracing. In Hogwarts Legacy, now that I can do the ray tracing at much higher than low res, I'm noticing that the extra resolution, the fidelity that allows with the ray tracing effects rolling out along, say, the edge of a picture frame or something, it no longer feels like a visual noise. Alright, so I fly down here just for I try to generate worst case scenarios where there's all map transitions. So right there I can see my low frame rate has already dropped to load that section ahead. So now I'm just going to turn around, I'll go back this way. So look, what I've come to realise in the last day, especially with regards to ray tracing, is if you haven't got an HDR set, and by that I don't mean HDR 600, I mean proper HDR 1000, quite likely on an OLED, quite likely tuned or calibrated. If you're not doing HDR, the benefits of ray tracing drop right off. And I've been running around town. I was playing in The Witcher. This game I've put a lot of time into, this being Hogwarts Legacy, a lot of time into on the console, which I've played in HDR just about exclusively. I do find HDR on a Windows PC a bit of a nightmare. Certainly something you want to turn on and off, and learn your shortcut keys to reforce it if you have to. But having turned it back on, having turned the HDR on the set and gone back to Hogwarts with ray tracing, gone back to The Witcher with ray tracing, the effects, which was just visual noise, was no longer visual noise. It looked brilliant. You could see that your eyes could resolve it across the set, across the scene. It just made sense. Very hard to render zone this. Arguably, if you can play an open world game like this, I do tune this one to have frame rate lows, because for me I'd rather have the beauty than... Oh look, I should just include the castle. You can't have a trip to Hogwarts without getting to the castle, eh? Let's go to the castle. Alright, so I can fly down low, which forces all sorts of interactions with characters, therefore motion blurs and all sorts of things. But it's more about running the grass at the high detail level. Frame rate here